From the Odyssey by Homer, translation by Tony Klein, Book 9, pages 152 to 192. Odysseus tells his tale, the Cyclops Cave. Looking across to the land of the neighboring Cyclops, we could see smoke and hear their voices, and the sound of their sheep and goats. Sun set and darkness fell, and we settled to our rest on the shore. As soon as the rosy-fingered dawn appeared, I gathered my men together, saying, "The rest of you loyal friends stay here while I and my crew take ship and try to find out who these men are, whether they are cruel, savage, and lawless, or good to strangers, and in their hearts fear the gods." With this, I went aboard and ordered my crew to follow and loose the cables. They boarded swiftly and took their place on the benches, then setting in their rows, struck the gray water with their oars. When we had reached the nearby shore, we saw the deep cave overhung with laurels at the cliff's edge close to the sea. Large herds of sheep and goats were penned there at night, and round it was a raised yard walled by deep-set stones, tall pines, and high-crowned oaks. There a giant spent the night, one that grazed his herds far off alone, and keeping clear of others lived in lawless solitude. He was born a monster and a wonder, not like any ordinary human, but like some wooded peak of the high mountains that stands there isolated to our gaze. Book 9, pages 193 to 255. Odysseus tells his tale. Polyphemus returns. Then I ordered the rest of my loyal friends to stay there and guard the ship, while I selected the 12 best men and went forward. I took with me a goat skin filled with dark, sweet wine that Maron, son of Euthynes, priest of Apollo, guardian god of Ismarus, had given me, because out of respect we protected him, his wife, and child. He offered me splendid gifts, 7 talents of well-wrought gold and a silver mixing bowl, and wine, 12 jars in all, sweet unmixed wine, a divine draught. None of his serving men and maids knew of this store, only he and his loyal wife and one housekeeper. When they drank that honeyed red wine, he would pour a full cup into 20 of water, and the bouquet that rose from the mixing bowl was wonderfully sweet. In truth, no one could hold back. I filled a large goat skin with the wine and took it along, with some food in a bag, since my instincts told me the giant would come at us quickly, a savage being with huge strength, knowing nothing of right or law. Soon we came to the cave and found him absent. He was grazing his well-fed flocks in the fields. So we went inside and marveled at its contents. There were baskets full of cheeses and pens crowded with lambs and kids, each flock with its firstlings, later ones, and newborns separated. The pails and bowls for milking, all solidly made, were swimming with whey. At first my men begged me to take some cheeses and go, then to drive the lambs and kids from the pens down to the swift ship and set sail, but I would not listen, though it would have been best, wishing to see the giant himself and test his hospitality. When he did appear, he proved no joy to my men. So we lit a fire and made an offering, and helped ourselves to the cheese, and sat in the cave eating, waiting for him to return, shepherding his flocks. He arrived bearing a huge weight of dry wood to burn at supper time, and he flung it down inside the cave with a crash. Gripped by terror, we shrank back into a deep corner. He drove his well-fed flocks into the wide cave, the ones he milked, leaving the rams and the he-goats outside in the broad courtyard. Then he lifted the door, a huge stone, and set it into place. 22 four-wheeled wagons could not have carried it, yet such was the great rocky mass he used for a door. Then he sat and milked the ewes and bleating goats in order, putting her young to each. Next, he curdled half of the white milk and stored the whey in wicker baskets, leaving the rest in pails for him to drink for his supper. When he had busied himself at his task and kindled a fire, he suddenly saw us and said, "Strangers, who are you? Where do you sail from over the sea roads? Are you on business? Or do you roam at random like pirates who chance their lives to bring evil to others?" Odysseus tells his tale. Trapped. Book 9, page 256 to 306. Our spirits fell at his words, in terror at his loud voice and monstrous sighs. Nevertheless, I answered him, saying, "We are Achaeans returning from Troy, driven over the ocean depths by every wind that blows. Heading for home, we were forced to take another route, a different course, as Zeus, I suppose, intended. We are followers of Agamemnon, Atreus' son, whose fame spreads widest on earth. So great was the city he sacked and host he slew. But we, for our part, come as suppliant to your knees, hoping for hospitality and the kindness that is due to strangers. Good sir, do not refuse us. Respect the gods. We are suppliants, and Zeus protects visitors and suppliants. Zeus, the god of guests, who follows the steps of sacred travelers." His answer was devoid of pity. "Stranger, you are a foreigner or a fool, telling me to fear and revere the gods, since the Cyclops care nothing for Aegeus-bearing Zeus. We are greater than they. I would spare neither you nor your friends to evade Zeus's anger, but only as my own heart prompted. But tell me now, where you moored your fine ship when you landed. Was it somewhere nearby or further off? I'd like to know." His words were designed to fool me, but failed. I was too wise for that, and answered him with cunning words. "Poseidon, Earthshaker, smashed my ship to pieces, wrecking her on the rocks that edge your island, driving her close to the headland so the wind threw her on shore. But I and my men here escaped destruction." Devoid of pity, he was silent in response, but leaping up, laid hands on my crew. Two he seized and dashed to the ground like whelps, and their brains ran out and stained the earth. He tore them limb from limb for his supper, eating the flesh and entrails, bones and marrow like a mountain lion, leaving nothing. Helplessly we watched these cruel acts, raising our hands to heaven and weeping. When the Cyclops had filled his huge stomach with human flesh and had drunk pure milk, he lay down in the cave, stretched out among his flocks. Then I formed a courageous plan to steal up to him, draw my sharp sword, and feeling for the place where the midriff supports the liver, stab him there. But the next thought checked me. Trapped in the cave, we would certainly die, since we'd have no way to move the great stone from the wide entrance. So sighing, we waited for bright day. Book 9, page 307 to 359. Odysseus tells his tale, offering the Cyclops wine. As soon as rosy-fingered dawn appeared, Cyclops relit the fire. Then he milked the ewes and bleating goats in order, putting her young to each. When he had busied himself at his task, he again seized two of my men and began to eat them. When he finished, he drove his well-fed flocks from the cave, effortlessly lifting the huge door stone and replacing it again like the cap on a quiver. Then, whistling loudly, he turned his flocks out onto the mountain slopes, leaving me with murder in my heart, searching for a way to take vengeance on him. If Athene would grant me inspiration, the best plan seemed to be this. The Cyclops' huge club, a trunk of green olive wood, had to be cut to take with him as soon as it was seasoned, lay next to a sheep pen. It was so large and thick it looked to us like the mast of a 20-oared black ship, a broad-beam merchant vessel that sails the deep ocean. Approaching it, I cut off a 6-foot length, gave it to my men, and told them to smooth the wood. Then, standing by it, I sharpened the end to a point and hardened the point in the blazing fire, after which I hid carefully in one of the heaps of dung that lay around the cave. I ordered the men to cast lots as to which of them should dare help me raise the stake and twist it into the Cyclops' eye when sweet sleep took him. The lot fell on the very ones I would have chosen, 4 of them, with myself making a 5th. He returned at evening, shepherding his well-fed flocks. He herded them swiftly, every one, into the deep cave, leaving none in the broad yard, commanded to do so by God or because of some premonition. Then he lifted the huge door-stone and set it in place, and sat down to milk the ewes and bleating goats in order, putting her young to each. But when he had busied himself at his task, he again seized 2 of my men and began to eat them. That was when I went up to him, holding an ivy wood bowl full of dark wine, and said, "Here, Cyclops, have some wine to follow your meal of human flesh, so you can taste the sort of drink we carried in our ship. I was bringing the drink to you as a gift, hoping you might pity me and help me on my homeward path. But your savagery is past bearing. Cruel man, why would anyone on earth ever visit you again when you behave so badly?" At this, he took the cup and drained it, and found the sweet drink so delightful, he asked for another draught. "Give me more freely, then quickly tell me your name, so I may give you a guest gift, one that will please you. Among us Cyclops, the fertile earth produces rich grape clusters, and Zeus's rain swells them. But this is a taste from a stream of ambrosia and nectar." Book 9, page 360 to 412. Odysseus tells his tale, blinding the Cyclops. As he finished speaking, I handed him the bright wine. 3 times I poured it and gave it to him, and 3 times, foolishly, he drained it. When the wine had fuddled his wits, I tried him with subtle words. "Cyclops, you ask my name, and I will tell it. Give me afterwards a guest gift, as you promised. My name is Nobody. Nobody, my father, mother, and friends call me." Those were my words, and this his cruel answer. "Then my gift is this: I will eat Nobody last of all in his company, and all the others before him." As he spoke, he reeled and toppled over on his back. His thick neck twisted to one side, and all-conquering sleep overpowered him. In his drunken slumber, he vomited wine and pieces of human flesh. Then I thrust the stake into the depth of the ashes to heat it, and inspired my men with encouraging words, so none would hang back with fear. When the olive wood stake was glowing hot and ready to catch fire despite its greenness, I drew it from the coals. Then my men stood round me, and a god breathed courage into us. They held the sharpened olive wood stake and thrust it into his eye, while I threw my weight on the end and twisted it round and round as a man bores the timbers of a ship with a drill that others twirl lower down with a strap held at both ends, and so keep the drill continuously moving. We took the red-hot stake and twisted it round and round like that in his eye, and the blood poured out despite the heat. His lids and brows were scorched by flame from the burning eyeball, and its roots crackled with fire, as a great axe or adze causes a vast hissing when the smith dips it in cool water to temper it, strengthening the iron. So his eye hissed against the olive wood stake. Then he screamed terribly, and the rock echoed. Seized by terror, we shrank back, and he wrenched the stake, wet with blood, from his eye. He flung it away in frenzy and called to the Cyclops, his neighbors who lived in caves on the windy heights. They heard his cry, and crowding in from every side, they stood by the cave mouth and asked what was wrong. Polyphemus, what terrible pain is this that makes you call through deathless night and wake us? Is a mortal stealing your flocks or trying to kill you by violence or treachery? Out of the cave came mighty Polyphemus's voice. Nobody, my friends, is trying to kill me by violence or treachery. To this they replied with winged words. If you are alone and nobody does you violence, it's an inescapable sickness that comes from Zeus. Pray to the Lord Poseidon, our father. Book 9, page 413 to page 479. Odysseus tells his tale. Escape. Off they went, while I laughed to myself at how the name and the clever scheme had deceived him. Meanwhile, the Cyclops, groaning and in pain, groped around and labored to lift the stone from the door. Then he sat in the entrance, arms outstretched to catch anyone stealing past among his sheep. That was how foolish he must have thought I was. I considered the best way of escaping and saving myself and my men from death. I dreamed up all sorts of tricks and schemes, as a man will in a life or death matter. It was an evil situation. This was the plan that seemed best. The rams were fat with thick fleeces, fine large beasts with deep black wool. These I silently tied together in threes, with twist of willow on which that lawless monster Polyphemus slept. The middle one was to carry one of my men, and the other two on either side to protect him. So there was a man to every 3 sheep. As for me, I took the pick of the flock and curled below his shaggy belly, gripped his back, and lay there face upwards, patiently gripping his fine fleece tight in my hands. Then, sighing, we waited for the light. As soon as rosy-fingered dawn appeared, the males rushed out to graze, while the unmilked females' udders bursting and bleated in the pens. Their master, tormented by agonies of pain, felt the backs of the sheep as they passed him, but foolishly failed to see my men tied under the rams' bellies. My ram went last, burdened by the weight of his fleece, and me and my teeming thoughts. As he felt its back, mighty Polyphemus spoke to him. My fine ram, why leave the cave like this last of the flock? You have never lagged behind before, always the first to step out proudly and graze on the tender grass shoots, always first to reach the flowing river, and first to show your wish to return at evening to the fold. Today you are last of all. You must surely be grieving over your master's eye, blinded by an evil man and his wicked friends, when my wits were fuddled with wine. Nobody, I say, has not yet escaped death. If you only had senses like me, and the power of speech to tell me where he hides himself from my anger, then I'd strike him down. His brains would be sprinkled all over the floor of the cave, and my heart would be eased of the pain that nothing, nobody has brought me. With this, he drove the ram away from him out of doors, and I loosed myself when the ram was a little way from the cave, then untied my men. Swiftly, keeping an eye behind us, we shepherded those long-limbed sheep, rich and fat, down to the ship. And a welcome sight indeed to our dear friends were we, escapees from death, though they wept and sighed for the others we lost. I would not let them weep, though, but stopped them all with a nod and a frown. I told them to haul the host of fine fleece sheep on board and put out to sea. They boarded swiftly and took their place on the benches, then sitting in the rows struck the gray water with their oars. When we were almost out of earshot, I shouted to the Cyclops, mocking him. It seems he was not such a weakling then. Cyclops, that man whose friends you meant to tear apart and eat in your echoing cave. Stubborn brute, not shrinking from your murdering murdering your guest in your own house, your evil deeds were bound for sure to fall on your own head. Zeus and the other gods have had their revenge on you.